What if I told you that the greatest threat to humanity did not come from a distant galaxy, but from a dimension right next to ours? For decades, the shadow government has conditioned us to look up at the stars. They feed us movies about friendly extraterrestrials and distant spaceships. They keep our minds locked inside a carefully constructed narrative, hoping we will never look closely at the terrifying reality unfolding right here on Earth. But what happens when the Matrix glitches? What happens when a man on the inside breaks his non-disclosure agreement, picks up a phone, and tries to warn the entire world? They pull the plug, literally. Welcome to Vantage Elite. Today we are opening the heavily redacted files of two of the most terrifying, unexplainable, and aggressively covered-up events in modern history. The 1997 Area 51 frantic caller and the chilling case of the extra-dimensional entity in the freezer. These are not campfire stories. These are the moments when the holographic illusion of our reality cracked and the global elites panicked to cover it up. Let's go back to September 11th, 1997. Long before the internet gave everyone a voice, there was Art Bell. Bell hosted Coast to Coast AM, a late-night radio broadcast beaming out of the Nevada desert. He discussed the paranormal, the unexplained, and government cover-ups, reaching tens of millions of listeners across the United States. On this particular night, Bell had opened a special phone line. It was reserved exclusively for former or current employees of Area 51, the most heavily guarded, highly classified black-budget military base on the planet. The rule was simple: no tracking, no caller ID, just the truth. For a while, the calls were standard conspiracy fare, but then a call came through that froze the blood of every single person listening. The man on the other end of the line was not acting. He was in a state of pure, primal terror. His voice was trembling violently. He was hyperventilating, crying and breathless, speaking with the frantic urgency of a man who knew he was being hunted. He claimed to be a former Area 51 employee who had recently been medically discharged. He told Art Bell that he didn't have much time, that the military intelligence agencies were already triangulating his signal. And then he dropped a bombshell that shattered the extraterrestrial narrative. He screamed into the phone, "Art, the things we call aliens, they are not extraterrestrial. They are extra-dimensional beings. They are not what they claim to be. They have infiltrated the military and the government at the highest possible levels." Let that sink in. Extra-dimensional. They didn't fly here in spaceships from Mars. They vibrate at a different frequency. They bleed through the fabric of our reality. The frantic caller didn't stop there. He revealed the endgame. He stated with absolute horror that the shadow government in these extra-dimensional entities were working together. He warned that the elites knew about impending massive global disasters and that the government was actively planning the systematic depopulation of major population centers. The elites were not preparing to save humanity. They were preparing to sacrifice it. The caller was panicking. He was mid-sentence, about to reveal the core of the shadow government's dark agenda, when suddenly the line went dead. But it wasn't just the caller's line that got disconnected. Coast to Coast AM's entire radio show went completely off air. This was not a blown fuse in a Nevada radio station. Coast to Coast AM broadcasted its signal via the GE-1 communication satellite, positioned in a geostationary orbit 22,200 miles above the Earth's equator. It was a multi-million-dollar, fail-safe piece of telecommunications infrastructure designed to withstand severe weather and technical anomalies. Yet, at the exact second this whistleblower was exposing the extra-dimensional infiltration of the United States government, that satellite was intentionally knocked offline. Think about the sheer, terrifying power required to do that. You cannot hack a geostationary satellite from a laptop in your basement in 1997. To kill that signal, you need a massive directed energy surge, precise upload frequency access, and top-tier military clearance. The shadow government was listening. When the caller got too close to the absolute truth, the elites didn't just hang up his phone, they strangled a satellite 22,000 miles in space, just to shut him up.
The caller vanished. We never heard from him again. But what was he so terrified of? What do these extra-dimensional entities actually look like? To answer that, we have to look at another terrifying incident that occurred just 1 year earlier, in October 1996. A case that provides physical, horrifying proof of the very beings the Area 51 caller was trying to warn us about. Enter Dr. Jonathan Reed. Reed was a psychologist walking his golden retriever in the Cascade Mountains of Washington state. It was a normal afternoon until his dog suddenly bolted into the dense woods, barking aggressively. When Reed caught up, he found his dog engaged in a brutal confrontation. But it wasn't a bear or a mountain lion. It was a biological nightmare. Hovering silently just above the forest floor was a massive, pitch-black obelisk. It had no doors, no windows, and absorbed all light around it. Standing next to it was a creature that defied human comprehension. It wasn't a little green man. It was humanoid, wearing a seamless, dark, highly advanced biological suit. Before Reed could process what he was seeing, the entity raised its arm. A violent pulse of kinetic energy shot forward, instantly vaporizing his dog into a cloud of white ash. Operating purely on adrenaline and grief, Reed grabbed a heavy tree branch and charged the entity. He struck it over the head with lethal force, cracking its skull. The creature collapsed. For hours, Reed sat in the woods, terrified and traumatized. But then he made a decision that would ruin his life, but provides humanity with a massive piece of the puzzle. He wrapped the biological body in a thermal blanket, loaded it into the back of his truck, and drove it to his home. He put the biological entity inside his garage freezer to preserve the evidence. What followed is some of the most highly debated, chilling, and heavily suppressed video footage in UFO history. Reed grabbed his camcorder and began filming. The footage is shaky, raw, and disturbing. It shows Reed slowly opening his freezer to reveal a pale, severely wounded, large-headed entity wrapped in foil. The creature had deep, dark, almond-shaped eyes, but its skin and biological makeup looked entirely foreign, synthetic yet organic. Reed didn't just film it. He brought a friend over, and together they managed to pull off a piece of the entity's dark suit. What they discovered was terrifying. The suit was not made of fabric. It was biomechanical. It reacted to their touch. It bled a dark, unidentifiable fluid. It was self-healing. But extra-dimensional entities do not simply die from blunt force trauma. A few days later, Reed opened the freezer to check on the body. The creature was gone. It hadn't been stolen. It had revived, healed, and vanished, leaving behind only the biological suit and an overwhelming scent of ozone, the exact same metallic scent reported by whistleblowers at the Dulce underground base. Reed knew he had to get his footage to the public. He tried to expose the truth. But remember what happened to the Area 51 caller? The shadow government does not allow physical proof of the Matrix to exist. Within days, Dr. Jonathan Reed's life was systematically dismantled. His house was violently raided. All of his original physical evidence, including the biomechanical suit and the master tapes, were confiscated by heavily armed, unidentified government agents, the real Men in Black. But they didn't just take his evidence, they took his existence. When Reed tried to reach out to his colleagues, they claimed they had never met him. When he tried to access his bank accounts, they had been completely wiped and closed. His university degrees, his employment records, his utility bills,
all of it was digitally erased from the global database. The shadow government turned Dr. Jonathan Reed into a ghost. They launched a massive disinformation campaign, paying off media outlets to call his surviving VHS copies a hoax, a cheap movie prop. They expect you to believe that a random psychologist faked a highly advanced biomechanical suit, faked an alien corpse, and then voluntarily allowed his entire identity, career, and finances to be permanently destroyed, just for a prank? The Matrix is designed to make you doubt your own eyes. The Area 51 caller tried to warn us about the extra-dimensional infiltration. He was silenced by a satellite blackout. Dr. Jonathan Reed tried to show us the physical proof of these entities. He was erased from human history. These are not isolated incidents. They are the desperate, violent actions of a global elite that is terrified of humanity waking up. They are trading our future for extra-dimensional technology. They are plotting depopulation while keeping us distracted with politics, entertainment, and endless, meaningless news cycles. The Watchers are not in deep space. They are right here. They are vibrating just outside of our visual frequency, and the people running our world have already sold us out to them. The files are leaking. The illusion is breaking. They can cut the radio lines, they can erase the whistleblowers, but they cannot stop the frequency of truth. Question the official narrative. Do not look up at the stars, look at the shadows right in front of you. Stay awake, stay sovereign, stay elite.